This here is a calla lily. It's a beautiful plant. It originally from Africa. Nowadays around these parts is naturalized. Grows everywhere. Seems to like more moist places. But it's a very poisonous plant. I remember back in the day, a co-worker of mine, Susanna Buell, took a bite of it, had to go to the emergency room. But we're here to look at his parts. So I'll just jump right in and look at his parts. I'm going in. We're just gonna bust it off. Sorry, sacrifice for botany. Looking at it like that. Looking at these parts. They look different. The stuff on the top and the stuff on the bottom. So the question going back to plant parts, the male, female is, who's on top? Is the male parts on top? The pollen? Or is it on the bottom? Where's the ovaries? What parts look more like ovaries? The top or the bottom? So the question is, who's on top? Good morning. I'm squatting here next to one of my friends, my poisonous friends. There it is. There it is looking at you. So sometimes it's helpful to plant plants that are poisonous in the sense that the animals don't like to eat them. So you plant these bulbs, the gophers will avoid it, the deer won't eat it, and then you get your pretty flowers without having to put in gopher baskets and poison and traps and all that kind of business. This one seems to bloom for us here springtime, usually a little bit after the crocuses. A little bit before the tulips, more or less. About the same time as the Freesia start blooming. My question to you then is, what's the name of this plant? I give you a little hint. One of the common names refers to the fact, old-time Greek mythology, there was a man, he was in love with himself, so drowned from his own vanity, so to speak. But that's the plant that's named after him. So a lot of times it grows by the riverways, grows by the water, where he was looking at his own reflection and went down for a hug and a kiss. That's it. It's a plant used for poison. Usually specifically they call it a pesticide, right? It's a fish poison. That's what the native peoples used here when they slow down a river or a small stream, dam it up a little bit, take some chunks of the root of this plant, put it in there, swash it all around, and then boom, the fish come up. It's the saponins, the chemicals, boom, make them want to come up. So this here is the plant called manroot. When we tried to dig it up, it's got a root as big as a person, like 100 pounds, sometimes 150 pounds. Huge bunch of root, bunch of good fish poison. And the seeds, they come out in like a little cucumber basket, a little ball of a fruit, inside olive colored seeds, usually about 3 of them. It's good suicide poison too for the old time native peoples. So we'll get in for a closer look. Unfortunately here you can see it's crawling all over the landscape and it's kind of considered a weed, but it's a poison. Good plant too. Here's his long tendril, there's his root. And there's another long tendril over that away. The root's down in here somewhere. If you can imagine 100 pounds of root. And there's the pretty flowers. Related again, as you can see from its habit, its growth, its chemicals, its leaf, to the cucumber family. So your squashes, your zucchinis, your watermelons, your pumpkins, all them good plants. It was about 10 years ago here that over down the street here they made a new child care center, Ophelia Child Care Center. And they put in all new nice green roofs, and there was a bunch of new landscaping too. So we went there with our students to take a look, check a look around. And I'm looking, and all of a sudden rows and rows, probably 100 plants or so was this plant. And I said, well, this is a nice plant. It's a real good looking plant. This is called yesterday, today, tomorrow. Sounds kind of trippy, but it's because the flowers change color from pink to white to purple. It's a member of a group of plants they call the nightshades. So there's some edibles, real nice edibles in this group. Stuff that we take for granted these days, tomatoes and potatoes. But there's a number of very poisonous, toxic members in the same group also. Some of them are witches' poisons from the medieval ages. Other ones are shaman medicines from the Amazon. But this one here, yesterday, today, tomorrow, planted in bunch loads. We didn't think that was really appropriate for a children's garden where kids might go around chewing on leaves and stuff. So we asked permission, and we dug them all up and started to plant them around here. And they've done okay. They probably like to get out of the wind a little bit. But it just goes to show you, if you're an architect or a designer, you got to know what plants are poisonous and what kind of context you're going to be planting them in. It's not just to say, oh, I'm just going to look at something that's got a nice shape, nice size, nice color. That's the one you're going to look. You got to consider the other aspects too when you're putting in a garden. That way you don't run into problems down the line. We was talking earlier about saponins, so kind of soap-like chemicals, you might say. So this is another California native plant, like the man root, and it's the flowers are particularly interesting to us, which we'll take a look at. There's a ceanothus, also known as the California wild lilac. So you do this trick, show the kids, they'll love this one. They'll think it's the funnest thing in all the world. Rub, 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 until you get a nice lather. And whoo, it smells so good too. So then you just wash it off. You got nice clean hands that smell so, so good. And free too. If you're going to be a gardener, or maybe you want to be an herbalist, or even this, you got to know your plants and you got to know their internal properties. That's to say if they're medicinal, if they're poisonous or not. As gardeners, most often we always want to be careful about the plants we plant, so nobody eats them, ingests them, and gets sick or gets hurt, whether you or as a member of the general public. Out here we got a couple of, right behind me, a couple of plants that are known from antiquity for being whether strong medicines or downright poisonous. I'll show you a couple. This here, the first one, this is an angel's trumpet, we call Bougainvillea. Oh, it smells so good. So again, seems like often they're a member of the nightshades, and it's chock full of alkaloids, like chemicals that are strong. One of them is scopolamine, so I don't know if y'all get motion sickness or not. Whether you try ginger, or you try a little acupuncture thing, or you take those Dramamine pills. Sometimes if you get real seasick, if you're fishing out there for those rockfish and the lingcod, they say take this one plant, take this one drug, scopolamine. And so this is chock full of scopolamine. Another one good alkaloid contains is atropine. And in the old days used as an eye dilation, kind of an alkaloid. These days not used so much anymore. They got other ones, probably use them better and don't last as long. But still, another one known throughout the ages as a poisonous plant. Y'all know this one? This is the bowwood of the English longbow. Any guesses? Well, this here is a yew tree. Got little red berries. They say the berry is not the poisonous part, but it's the seed. So they'll be tempting. You'll be seeing them. I'm like, wow, that's a beautiful looking thing. If the birds can eat it, maybe I can eat it. But then you would be wrong. It would be intensely gastrointestinal, all sorts of problems will come to you. But the thing is, you got to remember, it occurs on a spectrum, from poisons to medicines. A while back, there was cases of ovarian cancer, and people didn't know what quite the best medical treatment for it was. And out of a bark of a yew tree, they found good remedies for it, to treat it. And so what happened then, people went into the forest and they started stripping all this bark off this poor little Pacific yew tree. And it grows slowly, you know, this poor tree. So luckily they were able to synthesize it, and now they call this drug Taxol. The genus of the yew is Taxus. So there it is. But right behind me, in close, full view of everybody, a couple of very poisonous plants, possibly medicinal too. So everything depends on the dosage. If you work as a gardener for any length of time, sooner or later you're going to come across working with all these plants that are pokey, spiny, and they're going to hurt you. So aside from the plants that you eat and they're going to hurt you, there's all these plants that are likely to cause you physical harm because of their sharp thorns or spikes or what have you, whatever they got on their bodies, usually to protect themselves from other herbivores. Right there behind me we got a few of them. This here is agaves. You can see these needles are like this sharp on there. Real painful if they poke you, but sometimes maybe overgrown their path. Maybe somebody planted them in the median strip thinking they look cute, and then 10 years later, all of a sudden, you, the gardener, that's got to take care of this problem. And this actually occurs pretty commonly. So you have to be able to take precautions. Always, if you can, if you need to wear a hard hat, wear a hard hat. Nice thick leather gloves, even though a lot of times the spines, boom, they poke right through. Heavy steel toe shoes with a nice sole. Again, you can have a thick old rubber sole, the spines of Bougainvillea, they stick right through. And lastly but not least, the eye protection, because you only got a pair of those, and I don't think they're making artificial eyeballs yet that work well. So I'm going to show you a handful of other plants like this, so just be aware when you're working with them. This here is another popular plant for us in San Francisco, is blackberry. The birds love to eat the berries, and they drop them and they poop them out, and then start growing. And then as these vines go along the ground, boom, if they touch the ground, any of the stems, it starts rooting again. And then it arches and bends over, and then boom, touches the ground, and it arches and roots again. So, fibrous, thick, and a serious enemy to behold if you're weeding, if you're a gardener. But for sure, one of my favorite of all enemies. This is one of my best friends for all times. Good old blackberry. Right here to my left is one of the old-time remedies of European herbal medicine, one of the mainstays. So say you were growing up and your heart didn't beat quite regularly. It wouldn't be boom, 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 strong, regular. Instead, it was like boom, boom, pa, 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 boom, boom, pa, pa, pa. So then you go to see an herbalist and they probably prescribe a little drink, a tea of this plant for you right here. So you got to figure out what's the name on this one. We're talking about plants that cause injury to you. And so this here is Bougainvillea. Real pretty showy bracts on this one, in this case red. Sometimes they come orange into yellow. But the problematic parts for a gardener working with them are, of course, the spines. And they're sharp and very, very thin, so they go right through you. And sometimes it's not so much the problem the spine itself, then you just bleed a little bit, you heal, but it's whatever's sitting on those spines. There could be fungus, there could be bacteria, all of them would just get injected right into you, kind of hypodermic needle right into you. And if it starts to grow inside you, boom, no good. You better go get your antibiotics or your antifungals, or else you're going to start losing limbs, start amputating. So be very careful with this group. We're here in the middle of the city at a park called Glen Canyon. And this here behind me is one of the poisonous plants, you might say. That's a good one to know, whether you're hiking on trails all throughout California and beyond, or if you're a gardener working in places where you might encounter such a plant. The plant we're talking about is called Toxicodendron diversilobum. So it's good old poison oak. And there's a bunch of identifying characteristics that will go in for a closer look. But just remember, in the springtime right now, spring going into summer, leaves are out. Beautiful, glossy green leaves. Later on, by fall, winter, all the leaves will have gone down, deciduous, and it'll be just a bunch of branches. So you have to try to get to know it in all the forms. Okay, here we are. Like they say, leaves of three, let them be. Blackberry got the leaves of three going on too, but you'll see the spines and the flowers are real different. This one's actually flowering right here, right now. Tiny little white flowers. Later on, a little berry that the birds, they love to eat. And we'll follow the stems all the way up. Another thing is that little bit of shine that it's got. That's where they say if it's shiny, watch your hiney. And this could be passed from your dog fur to you. Could be a burlap that you're dragging along and it touches you, gets on your skin, and then you be rashing and itching and reaching for that calamine. This here is the plant that we had seen earlier, the poison oak. But this one's growing in the sun instead of the shade of a canopy of a tree, and it's just leafing out, so it's all nice and red. Maybe it's the soil too. So just wanted to show it to you so you can see it. You can take on different forms. We've talked about plants that got stingers that'll sting you or hurt you, or plants that you eat will kill you, or plants that if you touch them a lot they might give you a bad rash. Well, this is another group of plants that you should be aware of if you're a gardener. It's a group that's got tiny little hairs. On this particular plant, Toxicodendron, it's on the underside of the leaves, along with stems, everywhere. Tiny little brown hairs that are real, real itchy. It irritates you to no end, especially if they get in your eyes, or maybe if you're pruning them down the back of your neck because it falls down your shirt. So it's just something to be aware of. Another group of plants.